Hello.
Can I check for the volume?
Yes, Steve, I can hear you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Gwen.
You're welcome.
6.
Barb, if you would get ready to unmute, you're almost ready to begin.
All set.
Yes, go ahead. We are live on YouTube.
Okay. Finance Committee will come to order. Is Amy here?
I believe, yes, she
There
is.
you are. I'm sorry. I was looking for you where you were before. You weren't there. First thing on the agenda is Lorraine County Residence Assessment, and the mayor and Mr. Is it Romancic?
Romanchek.
Romancic, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
All right, thank you, Councilwoman. I have been in receipt of a letter from Lorraine County Stormwater Management since early this year. And the letter details charges that will be assessed to Vermilion residents that are related to the ever famous Maple View Ditch project in the amount of $10,000. I thought this ought to be at least brought to council's awareness and the public, and to detail those charges. With us tonight is Don Romanchuk, who is the Assistant Director of the Lorain County Stormwater Management District. Don, can you illuminate this letter a little bit, please?
Yes, and thank you, Mayor and Council, for inviting me. As everyone is probably aware by now, Mapleview Ditch, well, primarily serving the residents of Brown Helm Township, does have some of its drainage area within the city of Vermilion. The township and its residents brought this as a project to the stormwater district. And over a couple of years of design and changes, the project was ultimately approved by Lorain County Board of Commissioners. Project was bid out and was built. During that time, we'd had several conversations, both with the township and with the city of Vermilion, both the administration and council. And at one of those meetings, it was brought up the fact that Brown Helm Township was contributing dollars to the project to reduce the costs and to ensure that their residents would not have any assessment. The Stormwater District has paid for most of it, and the letter that was sent to Mayor Forthofer and the city of Vermilion details the costs that the residents of Vermilion would incur should the city, and it's the city's decision, decide not to contribute towards the cost of the project. Originally, we had talked about $10,000 before the project had been bid out, and I felt fairly confident that that would be more than enough to cover the costs of the construction and probably some maintenance. As it turns out, the construction costs, when broken out on the acres benefited within the city of Vermilion, came out to be a total of $8,122.71. And that's broken down with the highest being for one property owner that has 1.14 acres being benefited, would pay $2,533.56. Most of the residents that live along the ditch, a portion of their yard drains into the ditch, their construction assessment would be $244.47. The balance of the $10,000 mentioned in the letter sent to the administration would cover the annual maintenance. Within the Lorain County Stormwater Management District, none of our residents pay for ongoing maintenance as they're charged a stormwater fee, and the district uses a portion of that fee to maintain the ditches that are under maintenance. The city of Vermilion, not being a member of the district, we'd be unable to extend that courtesy. So the balance of the money the $1,877.29 would go towards annual maintenance of the Mapleview ditch. And that would equate to basically 22 years where no resident would be assessed money. And again, it's a bit of a spread. The most expensive, we have one property owner who would be assessed $25 a year towards it, and most of the residents would be charged $2.48. There are a couple of other prices in there, but again, $25.70 is the high. Most pay $2.48. So what I was hoping to accomplish today was to answer any questions people may have to the best of my ability, and then to see whether or not the city would be willing to contribute towards the project financially and then we would go ahead and credit that against the residents' potential charges. Now, I will say, because of the change in the year, all of the residents within Vermilion along Mapleview have been charged 1 year's annual maintenance. So that is on their property tax bill. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions and expound upon anything that I might be able to.
One question I guess I would have is, did these people gain anything from this ditch, or are the people in Vermilion just a pass-through entity for the township?
They got an improved ditch. Now, they have not been suffering much in the way of flooding, but with the improved ditch, the water is flowing much better, and the risk to the most of the residents along Rolling Acres do not need to worry about their backyards being flooded. We've also stabilized the slopes so that there is less risk of erosion. There were a couple of places where some erosion had been taking place on a couple of residents' property because of the steep slopes. And then we also improved using some riprap rock around some buildings that were placed within the drainage easement to protect them. I think we have a couple of garages that were actually allowed to be built in the drainage easement. We also relocated and cooperated with residents to relocate sheds and fences. And so everyone is benefiting from this project, and the costs that are affiliated are based upon the acres benefited. And so most of the people in the city of Vermilion have just about 1/10 of an acre, a little larger than 1/10 of an acre, being benefited by the project.
Yep, Brian?
Oh, Barb, if you're not done, are you
No,
done?
that's it. That's
Okay. So the folks on Mapleview and Rolling Meadows Drive are going to be assessed this fee, correct? Just on Mapleview and Rolling Meadows?
We also have Linda Drive, Candy Lane Drive, and Brown Helm.
Yeah, those are all within the township. Yes.
Oh, okay. But yes, in Vermilion, Mapleview, and Rolling Meadows.
Right.
But even Mapleview is still considered part in the township as well, right?
Well,
Right of
There's a
way.
couple houses.
yeah, a couple houses on Maple behind are benefiting.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I see him. Yeah. Because I'm looking at the map now. So they already on their property taxes already have been assessed for the year, correct?
For annual maintenance. We have not assessed them for the construction.
And I guess I don't. And again, it's been over a year, so please excuse me for not remembering. Was that discussed? I mean, was that part of the discussion that this maintenance fee would be assessed to our residents?
Yes.
Okay. But at the time, I think you guys didn't know what exactly how much.
We didn't know what the exact amounts would be, and we did know that they would be fairly small. Again, for most of your residents, the annual maintenance fee is $2.48. That's a year, not a month.
Correct.
So
Okay.
yeah, I'm a little disappointed that we didn't have this on the stormwater agenda at the prior meeting. It would have been something I think the stormwater committee should have probably looked at.
Yeah.
And that's the fund that if monies are allocated, it would have come out of, correct? Oh, Jim, are you there?
Oh, yeah. No, I don't, currently no funds are coming out of anywhere.
I know, but I feel like it should have maybe been on their agenda to see if
Well,
they
It
felt.
certainly is on a finance agenda. I mean, I guess we could have put it on stormwater too. But like I say, there's no funds at this time coming out of any city fund.
I understand that. Does any other councilman have any input on the issue? Any feelings about how we should move forward? Steve?
Yeah, I walk through there on a regular basis. So yes, it is. The water is flowing real nice. Other than the all the trees that came down, I think things are starting to look normal now. As for the funding, the $8,000, what portion, Don, was the city itself out of that? And what was part of the total 8,000? What part is the city? 8,000, or was that the whole assessment?
That was the whole assessment for Vermilion. The city itself with its right of ways would be $1,689.04.
Okay, thank you. Only recommendation I could say is, I got to look at the administration for 1,600 and change. Where can we take that and take care of the residents? Is it stormwater? Is it some other fund? And have the administration get back to us and see what we can do to help them. Thank you.
Let me make sure I understand your comment, Steve. You're looking to the administration for what, guidance as to which fund it should come out of?
Well, I mean, it's under the limit where we can force it out of something. I mean, we can take it to the stormwater, we can do anything, but with $1,600, you have multiple funds that you can look at and come back to council, give us a recommendation where we could pay for this if we wanted to. I think Barb is correct in what she's saying. We should have brought this up an hour ago under stormwater, because that would have been the proper place to do it. But maybe what we can do is come back and just find a good way to pay for it. It's a one-time deal, correct, Don? One-shot deal?
Yes, this is a one-time bill on the construction side.
Yeah,
And
I'm
then the
not talking,
maintenance. Yeah, I was gonna
I'm not
say,
talking maintenance. Yeah.
okay.
Barb,
Yes, can we wait on this until next month when the Stormwater Committee meets? Is there any?
Barb,
Yes, yes,
can I point out, and I might not be right on this, but it wasn't a city project. It was a project that was done by the county.
right.
Stormwater recommends projects to council. So I don't know if this would belong in storm water committee. I think this would have to be coming from council to direct whether they're gonna go
Well, then
forward
we
with
might
this
have
thing.
to, we might be directing it, but it would be nice to have their input on whether they feel that we should. It's going to come out of their budget. So I guess my feeling is it would be nice to have their input into the issue. Whether the decision is council's or theirs, it's kind of immaterial. I'm just looking for input.
Do you want me to then put it on this? Are you asking me to put it on stormwater for next month?
Well, I'm asking Don if it can wait that long, I guess, at this.
Yes, it could.
Okay, yes, then I would, then my feeling is, I don't know about the rest of council, but I feel like it's an issue that maybe stormwater should take a look at and advise us. Does anybody else have a feeling pro or con? Steve?
Yeah, I think that that should be considered, although I'm just not real excited about taking it out of stormwater. They did not approve that project. As Gwen said, it was a county project, and I would look to the administration to say, okay, this is to help out the citizens, kind of with where Steve is on it. Let's let the administration come back with some thoughts on where it ought to come out. But
Okay.
if stormwater doesn't approve a project, I don't know that we should just grab $1,600 out of their
I mean, actually, aren't we looking at $88,000?
yeah, but
8,800.
We're looking at 8,000,
sorry, I
we're
was
looking at 1,600.
yeah. So I just don't know that we want to do that. But again, I'm kind of where you are, Barb, just putting that out for thought. I mean, just
Yeah,
think.
well, that's right. I mean, we'll have to vote on it, but
Okay.
anybody else have any input? Yeah, Frank?
Yeah, hey, Barb, actually, the story
You're cutting out, Frank.
has had zero involvement in this through the whole project, since it's been a Lorraine County project. I'm not sure, throwing it back on the Stormwater Committee, who's had zero involvement in it, because ultimately it's administration and council decision anyway. So anyway, that's just my input.
Okay, well,
We can make a recommendation as to where we think it should come out of, and then you can vote on it.
okay. Well, we'll leave it up to you to do that. Okay, Mayor?
Sure, absolutely.
And thanks for coming down. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. It's always good to see you. One day it'll be in person, I hope.
So, I hope so too. The second
Thank you.
thing on the agenda is the tree commission funding, 2021 budget review. Emily and Amy?
Okay, I know Amy and Steve Heron received a report from the tree commission. I just wanted to do a brief review on what we received. And their tree and stump removal during 2020 was, they used all of the funds provided by council to remove hazardous trees and their stumps. The tree stumps were cleaned up and topsoil were reseeded. And reseeding were completed at the removal of the sites. The trees selected for removal were chosen from the list compiled during their last inventory by Jason Cowles. He was a certified arborist that they hired. It was recommended to continue with the removal of the trees by risk rating and they have requested funding for 2021 for this purpose. They've also had 34 trees that were planted on the city tree sites in 2020. All trees planted are paid for by donations or grants. The commission members and volunteers watered all newly planted trees regularly. Commission members volunteered 507 hours in 2020 and 3 memorial trees were planted in 2020. They were also recommended by Tree City USA the last 9 consecutive years for exceeding requirements by the Arbor Day Association for caring for our trees. Also, in 2012, it was estimated that 150 trees needed to be removed. The report from their 2020 was that there are 94 left needed removal at a cost of $56,480. In 2016, we donated generously $20,000. In 2017, council or the city donated $20,000. They had no funding in 2018 and 2019. And then in 2020, $5,000. I'm thinking the city benefits from this, from them, all of it. Their time donated for what they do. I'd like to see more money, if we could, allocated for the tree commission to just speed up the process of the removals of the trees that they've already reported to need removal and rated them. And their time is voluntary also, with other projects coming up for the city, including future trees that will also take up their time and be part of what they do, watering, all of that. So I am just asking that we consider maybe more money, not cutting any more money from the tree commission. I think it's valuable that we have them.
Trees
That's all I
on
had to say.
public or private property?
What's that?
Are these trees on public or private property that we're talking about?
I think it's both. People, whatever the city is required to remove, I think is a lot of what they do to try and just make sure that, it's safe for people.
Tony can answer that.
Yeah, thank you.
All these trees are in the city right away or in the public areas, the parks or the beach area, but mostly in the city right away.
Thank you, Tony.
So Amy, what about funding? Is this in the budget or what?
No, currently, that is not in the budget for this year. As I had indicated when we had discussed the budget in the past, that I'd like to have the people from the committees or the commissions bring those recommendations forward for everyone to discuss. I don't think that's something that is up to me to where to assign those projects. So it's certainly at council's discretion.
And we are still expecting a deficit,
Yes.
true? So that makes it kind of difficult to add more to the budget, no? How does council feel about it? I mean, can I get some input from council persons? Steve, Aaron?
Yeah, I just, even 5,000, and I know we're looking at a deficit and I understand that and appreciate it. And I don't envy the administration's job but the tree commission does critical work. These are safety issues and we do save money with the trees and healthy trees. We save a lot more than $5,000 a year. Trees do take up, they soak up a lot of stormwater. They do an enormous amount of advantages, and there's been studies done. And when we did have the tree commission go around and look at different things, basically 6 different aspects of urban forestry, we save much more than $5,000 a year. It's not just a bunch of people that like trees doing this for a hobby. An enormous benefit to our infrastructure.
Well, I think we're looking at 25,000 though. They're asking for 25,000.
25,000.
Yes.
Well,
20,000 is on their budget for tree removals.
And then they want an extra 5. So it's right. You said
Well,
25.
Well, we gave 5 last year.
we gave nothing the 2 years before, as I recall.
Right.
Put on.
So 20.
I would love to give them 25,000, but there's a limit when we're in a deficit. I think that 5 to 10,000 is a very reasonable amount given the benefit we get back from them. That doesn't. I can tell you right now, if they had 25,000, they would spend it very wisely and very beneficially to the city. But we have to balance that out. Looking at both sides, I certainly would not expect the administration in a deficit year to come up with that amount of money. But I just appreciate, Emmy, the information you gave us. It's critical. And maybe we need this summer to do the tree walk that we did a few years ago to get a realistic idea on the amount of money that is saved and the benefits of urban forestry in our community, particularly when we have stormwater issues like we do. So thank you.
Albex, did you have your name up?
Yeah, I'd like to see him get the whole $56,000, but I gotta trust what Amy's telling us, that when we're in a deficit, there's things that we have to look at and we gotta trim back on. And, I gotta take their word on what we can do. This is probably the first time in a long time that we're seeing a deficit going into a new year. Other years, it's not a problem giving money because we've had extra money that we've been able to work with. So I guess the recommendation would have to come from the administration. Where do we take the money from, or do we give them all the 20? That's their job to come back to us and tell us what we need, because they run the city. Thanks.
I was looking at the minutes from their meeting, and it looks like they have an opportunity to apply for money from the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. According to Sandusky received 100,000 and they were only responsible for 20% of that. Is that something they're looking into, Amy?
I've not been made aware of that.
Or Emily? I'm sorry.
I do know whatever grants they get, they use it more for planning and all of that. Our money goes strictly for removal and based on what trees that they've been assessed are the most important to be removed and that kind of thing.
Well, I was just curious. I mean, if they could get this grant that's a 20% match, they could certainly multiply their funds dramatically.
That would have to be, I think Jerry could answer that better than myself.
They have a tree commission meeting this Wednesday. Maybe Emmy could ask them on Wednesday about the grant.
Skip, did you have something you wanted to add?
Skip, unmute. Skip, you're muted. Give him a second. There's a button, unmute, Skip. Should be in the corner. There you go. You're on, Skip.
Has the ordinance it created the tree commission have been revised, or is it still the original ordinance that created them?
I believe it's still the original, Skip.
The reason I say that, their sole job is to advise the service director, be an advisor to him. They don't contract, they don't drive the truck around, they don't cut down trees. There is none of that in their ordinance. They are strictly advisory to the service director. Are they contracting with people to take down trees? It's not their function. Absolutely not.
Tony?
They don't contract. They have a certain amount of money that they have to spend on tree removal, and then they contact me. I go out and get 3 different quotes from different tree cutting contractors and set all of that up for them. They don't do it themselves. I do all
Okay.
that.
That's the way it's supposed to set up to be done.
Okay.
Correct.
Do any other council persons have any input? Yeah, Amy?
I would maybe suggest that if possible, and I know in previous years, a lot of the work has really started to happen in the fall, is that if we wanted to wait until we see how some of our tax settlements and things come in over the early months of the summer, that would, by then I should have a lot better idea where we're going to fall on any sort of a deficit situation. Should have a little better handle on that.
I would be very comfortable with that. Mayor?
Yeah, I was thinking somewhat along the same thing. I mean, I know we've been asked to have the administration make recommendations, but as it's council's job to, manage the purse strings here, I think that also you don't yet have a full perspective of what jobs are going to come before council. Fulper lot, for instance. I mean, there's a whole list of projects that the council will need to consider in order to make an informed evaluation of where money should go. This is an isolated view without context, I think. So until we get that full view of all the projects out there and all the equipment that needs to be purchased, I don't know that, I don't know if I could make that decision.
Well, could we take a straw vote of council and maybe look at putting this off till May, maybe June, maybe, or do you want to go later?
At least June, till we start seeing some of the income tax filings and things.
So if we put on the committee, if council is okay with it, we put it on the committee in June to look at again?
Mhm.
Would council be okay with that, Frank?
Yeah, so I'm comfortable with that.
Anybody have any objections to waiting?
Steve Heron here. I don't have any objections. I certainly respect the administration's position on the financials area that we're in. I'm gonna tell you what I'm gonna tell you in June, that just that investment that the city has given to the tree commission over the years has come back manyfold, regardless of the projects we have. To me, it's about money going into infrastructure as opposed to just about trees. It's about a whole lot of different issues. So that's all I've got. But yeah, that's fine. If we need to wait, it's the administration, as Steve Holliday said, coming back, the representations, I certainly respect that, and I'm fine with it.
So Emily, are you okay with explaining that to them?
Yeah.
Just real quick, can I say?
Yes. Brian?
Sorry. Thanks. Again, obviously let's wait, see what income tax money comes in as well. In the meantime, Emmy, can you please ask them to look into those possibilities of the grants and get the specific on those grants on what the grant money can be used towards as well. That would certainly help. But, like Councilman President Heron mentioned, with the projects and everything, the trees are important to infrastructure, important to stormwater. And, Fulper lot's certainly going to need trees. And where are we going to get the trees from? Obviously we'd like our tree commission involved in that as well. So, but yeah, waiting is wise. and we move forward after what we see comes in.
Okay. Well, Emily,
I-
tell them we really appreciate the job they're doing for us.
Yeah,
I
and
do want to emphasize that I know they do put in for grants and they do get grants for the rest of it. So the council money is used primarily for the tree removals. So I just
exactly
want-
right. I
Yeah.
wanted to agree with that because grants are for education and they're for planting. That's why you'll see the tree commission going to schools and on Arbor Day and doing all those things that are important, but that's the grant money. The safety issue on trees that are a problem in our community is really kind of falls on the city. And that's why grant, the people the organizations that give the grants, that's not to get rid of trees and do that. It's to teach and promote urban forestry. That's just basically what the grants are about. So
Amy, do you have something?
And dovetailing onto that, I know that last fall when they were doing the tree trimmings and removals, that there was a portion that the tree commission recommended, and I believe the service director had some additional ones that were funded by the city as well. Isn't that correct, Tony? Am I thinking of the correct projects?
You're muted.
Yes, you're correct.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So if there's no objection, we'll put this back on the agenda in June. And that concludes finance. We're adjourned.
All right,
Thank you.
Health and Safety Committee will be called. We'll start out with the Fire Chief's report. Chief Stempowski.
Unmute.
How's that?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. Thank you, Councilman Holmes. Good evening, everybody. It's been a extremely busy couple months for the fire department, so there's a whole lot to report on. I won't take too much of it tonight. For the month of February, the fire department responded to 23 incidents for a total of 47 for the year so far. A vast majority of the department was in training all day yesterday. We had Cleveland State University come in for a hazmat operations refresher course. We have some additional training coming a couple weeks from now from Findlay University along the same lines, a tech class that's going to be put on at the new facility. We began running out of the new facility on February 22nd. That day we got word that IT had finalized some of the whatever IT does for our communications. They got that done that day. So we actually started that evening of the 22nd, and we've been running rather well out of there. We haven't had any problems. Some small hiccups with little things, but nothing that's impacted the response. We're still moving items from Ohio Street and from the last day over at the service center. Ohio Street's probably about 80% vacated right now. It's still a work in progress. We're going to be using that back garage in the parking lot behind the Ohio Street facility for some storage. One thing that we're looking at is an outbuilding for the new facility, so that's a work in progress as well. All the phone numbers that are listed publicly for the fire department have been redirected over to the new facility, so there's no interruptions in phone service to the fire stations. The breathing air system down at Station 2 that we were waiting for word from the company as to whether or not it was salvageable. It's an older system, but they believe that they can modify it and get it up and running. I think that's the route we're going to go. We can do that for under $3,000 as opposed to looking at a refurbished or a used system, which is in the neighborhood of 15 to 20,000, or a new system would be upwards of 50,000. So with everything that's going on right now, we're going to have them come up and modify it, look at some grant opportunities in the future. We're okay with a system. We have a system up and running at the new facility. So we're just going to see what we can do with this one for now. The antenna and tower, I think I reported, was relocated from the Ohio Street site over to the new station in February. I think they've got that all finalized now. Communications, we do have. There's some new things that IT is working on with our backup repeater that I'm just starting to grasp. I don't understand the IT language, so I'm trying to pick up on that, but I have confidence in Mr. Posiewak and his team, so I'll just take their word for it and hope our communication stays the way it is. And that repeater, I guess, my understanding is they were working on that today. So it's online, but there's some differences and different capabilities of it that we're just starting to grasp. Truck 98, the truck that was involved in that incident on Route 2, we're still working with that with the insurance company. We don't know yet if the truck is repairable or if it's totaled. We're waiting for them to figure that out and let us know. But we are working with other companies to come in and give quotes or give their opinions on that truck. The rescue equipment that was on that truck has been transferred over to one of our fire engines. So all of that equipment is in service. It's just in a different truck for right now. And that concludes my report for this evening.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions? Gwen, if you could let me know if anybody has any questions for the chief.
I see nobody.
Okay. Just real quick, Chief, the
You muted, Brian.
sorry. Chief, as far as the breathing system, is that in Station 2? Is that like for the whole system, for the whole building?
You're muted, Chief.
Sorry about that.
All right.
That's for the SCBA's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's for filling the SCBA's. So
Okay. So
we're
the
gonna
new
try
station,
this modification.
okay, the new station has a new one.
Well, it has a newer one, yes.
Okay.
We have a fully functional system, yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
so I think we're gonna try this. I mean, we've got some things coming up, so we're looking at our dollars and making sure that we're staying in line. So we're gonna try this first.
Okay. And budget wise, you're doing all right?
I hope so. I would turn that over to Amy, but I think we're doing okay.
Okay. All right. All right. Yeah, just keep us updated on the breathing system. So,
Emmy's got a question.
Emmy.
Would the phone numbers just stay always being forwarded, or at one time will it change over to the new phone, their new phone numbers, or just being switched over?
It's my understanding that those numbers will stay the same. They just redirected them from the Ohio Street
Okay.
location to the Douglas Street. Yeah,
Okay.
that's my understanding. Yes.
Emily, I think eventually the way that that's going to be programmed on the voicemail portion of it is there'll be one published number for the fire department that they'll dial into, press a certain number if you want station 1, another one, station 2. It will remind them if it's an emergency, please hang up and dial 911, that type of thing. So it's trying to make it more simplified so that if someone thinks they're calling the fire station to report an emergency or something like that, and there's not, because our stations are not manned 24/7 because of their volunteer nature, it's hoping to avoid someone leaving a message on a voicemail at a station that has some urgency to it and having people not be there for several hours.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Amy.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions?
No.
All right. Yeah, it is important that if you need the fire department, don't call them directly, call 911 for emergencies. If you need them for just general questions, use the general non-emergency line. With that, we'll go to the police chief's report. Chief Hartung.
All right, I want to make sure I took my mic off mute. Seems to be the common theme tonight. So we recently had our awards ceremony to recognize the officers for their work in 2020. We recognized Dave James as our dispatcher of the year, Patrolman Andrew Davis as our full-time officer of the year, and Patrolman Marshall Murphy as our part-time officer of the year, as well as a myriad of other awards, well-deserved for some guys that put up with a very interesting year, to say the least. I'd like to thank Chaplain Jim Cooper and Foursquare Church for providing a facility, and they did a real nice setup for us, and it was a nice little ceremony. We recently completed our AD, CPR, and first aid training for the officers. Chief Stempowski so generously permitted us to use the new training room in the new station #1. It was my first time being in the facility. I cried, but it was beautiful. And again, I thank Chief Stempowski for generously allowing us to use that, and I fully plan on taking advantage of his generosity for more in the future. A lot of changes going on with the law, and bills that are in the Senate and the House and all over. I just finished updating our policy and procedure manual, and when I do that, one of the things I do is I look at trends in litigation as far as organizational risk management to dictate how we train our personnel to help minimize potential litigation in the future. So lots of things that came up, for instance, 2901.10 of the Ohio Revised Code, which deals with the restraint or confinement of pregnant women. There's changes going into effect April 12th, and I see Ben's online, and he got CC'd on an email from me today that there's a lot of issues as far as when you could use handcuffs with a person who's pregnant, when you have to consult with their physician to find out if it's okay for these type of things, and the fact that violations of this particular section can result in civil rights violations, which can be substantial litigation bombs for the city. So looking at that, looking at the police reform bills that are in the Senate, even though they apply to federal law enforcement officers, there's a lot of these provisions that are tied into states as far as federal funding. So we have to be in compliance with those. The issues of qualified immunity that are front and center on the national stage that are being discussed, and qualified immunity arguments that are going back and forth. So this is causing me as a police administrator. I thought I was going to be able to retire before all my hair fell out, but I don't see that happening, because I write a policy and then a month later I got to rewrite it because the state collaborative wants it one way and then the federal government wants it another way, and the federal government ties it into any funding that we can get. So it's turning out to be a very exciting year of policy writing. I never thought I'd get to say that out loud, but we're staying on top of it, and we're adjusting accordingly, and making sure that our training and our policies align with whatever the current trends are to provide the best in risk management mitigation for the city. So now that I got all that out, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you for the report. Any questions for the chief? Gwen?
I don't see any now.
Okay. Chief, again, thank you to you and all your officers. In the future, I know I got to go to last year to the award ceremony. I must have missed that invite this year, but again, I think I as a council member would certainly love to attend the meeting and glorify you and your officers that do a great job for us. So please, in the future, if there's an award ceremony, please extend the invitation. And again, thank you for all the hard work on the policies and procedures. I know, as well as you know, a lot's coming down from the Fed and state, and it's, as an administrator, your hands are full. So again, thank you for all the work.
As much, and the one thing I would put out there, as much as I love having you, because of the socially distant COVID requirements of this year, we minimize the external invitations. So you're going to have to talk to Fauci.
Okay. Well, hopefully next year we'll be able to attend. So thanks again.
I will make sure that I hand deliver your welcome invitation.
Thank you. With that, that concludes that. We'll go on to the Vermilion Fire Strategic Planning that has the Mayor Safety Director on it.
Yeah, thank you, Councilman. By the way, the chief did invite me 1/2 hour before the event and only allowed me to stay for 15 minutes. So he puts the health of his people first, and I appreciate that.
Yep.
Since I've been mayor, I've been working with the city employees and department heads, going through the city, trying to identify departments that are in critical need of review and strategic planning. First example probably is the finance department. Finance Director Hendricks did a deep dive on the finance department, consulted some of the outside organizations and consultants that she often mentions in our meetings, and did a thorough review and reorientation of the department. And I think all of us can attest that it is a much better department for it. Secondly, we took a deep dive on the information technologies department. Life Care was brought in, and we gave Life Care the charge of identifying what we have, seeing what the best use of what we have is, and drawing up a strategic plan for the next several years for our IT department. And currently, the wastewater treatment plant is being reviewed by a professional outside consultant who is in the course of presenting a strategic plan recommendation to the administration. Now, Chief Stempowski and I have brought in outside help to help review and create a strategic plan for the Vermilion Fire Department. We have chosen retired Sandusky Fire Chief Paul Ritchie. We introduced to the full department of officers and firefighters at a large group meeting last Saturday. I conveyed his impressive credentials, which includes 32 years in firefighting, starting as a volunteer in Perkins Township, by the way, his significant training and certifications, and his experience running programs in strategic planning and officer development. Chief Ritchie will interview every member of the VFD, officers and firefighters who make themselves available. And they all will work together to develop a strategic plan, present it to the chief and me. As the plan is going to be developed collaboratively among the officers and firefighters, ongoing implementation will be driven by those department members who have participated in the strategic planning. So I think that we could not find a more critical department in this city, aside from the police department, is our own Vermilion Fire Department. And I think this effort is well worth the time we put into looking for the correct partner for ourselves and for the time it will take to go through this process. And I think the Vermilion Fire Department deserves to have a long-term plan. They've got a beautiful new building, and having an organizational plan to go along with it to go forward, participated in by everyone, I think is the right thing to do for this department. So there you go.
Thank you, Mayor. Anybody have any questions, concerns, or comments for the mayor regarding this? Gwen?
No.
Okay. Again, Mayor, again, thank you.
That's it. You're welcome.
Brian, you're muted. Are you going to adjourn?
I am so sorry. I don't know how that happened. Chief Hartung must have slipped in here and fixed that for me. Again, thank you, Mayor, for bringing the retired chief in. Again, with the new building, the new facility, and moving forward, I think it's important that that the SOPs, SOGs be reviewed, just like Chief Hartung reviews the policies and procedures. It's good that, you know, we look at these policies and guidelines. We look at, again, going back to a letter we received from some firefighters and tackling their issues and getting this all ironed out and figured out, because again, the fire department does a great job for the city. And we certainly look forward to any positive change that could come out of this. So thank you. And that concludes, Gwen. That concludes health and safety.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
I'd like to call Utilities Committee to order. There's one item on the printed agenda. That's Liberty Avenue water main replacement. That's from Adams Street to Decatur Street. And Chris Howard and Tony Valerius are on deck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. After speaking with the finance director earlier this year, it was determined that we would be able to finance another water main project. What we decided was the section of water line on Liberty Avenue between Decatur and Adams Street would be the best way to go. This was chosen based on the city's 10-year water main replacement priority list that we submitted to the EPA. So tonight we would like to ask council to approve a motion for the city engineer to proceed with design services for this project.
Okay. Thank you. Any comments from Chris Howard or at this time?
Yeah, just to touch on it, 2 years ago, we submitted for OPWC funding for this section of the water line.
Mhm.
And it didn't warrant enough points because there's not enough laterals or services off that main line. But it is a critical feed for the western portion of the town. So it would make sense to be the next project now that there's money available.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Any comments from any council members?
Barb,
Frank,
Barb?
how much money are we talking about? I mean, what is the total project cost? Or do we have any idea what it is?
It's designed.
On the 10-year plan that we gave the EPA, that section was around 710,000.
Okay, so we have those kind of available funds. I'm taking it.
I believe that water fund has over $1 million.
Okay.
So in your professional opinion, then this is the next step in our program to meet EPA requirements.
Correct. And this one will be hard to get OPWC money. We've already tried.
Mhm.
So if the money's available, it makes sense to do it because we're not going to get funding from OPWC.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hollivax?
Thank you, Mr. Luca. Chris Howard, true or not, we've been very fortunate with the water line replacement. Based on what we had budgeted, they've come way under. So is that something that we can look forward to, that there's a chance that this will save us some money too because of the aggressive contractors out there?
Definitely. We're seeing bids come in. We'll have a bid recommendation for Sunnyside Road. We had bid openings last week and the numbers were 150, 200,000 less than what was estimated. So it's a competitive market.
Thank you.
Amy,
In relation to the finances also, that project was included in the update to the available funds for the water fund at the last meeting. So that was included in the last version of the appropriations that council received.
Thank you, Amy. Any other comments from anyone?
no.
Okay, thank you. Would there be a motion from the floor to authorize to proceed with this project?
I'll make that motion.
I'll
A
second.
Fabian? Unmute, Emmy.
Yes.
Brady,
Yes.
Luca,
Yes.
Hollivax,
Yes.
Holmes,
Yes.
Aaron.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. That includes that basically takes care of the Utilities Committee meeting for this evening, and it is adjourned. Thank you.
The legislative committee from Monday, March 8th will come to order. Just a general reminder, as residents would want to speak on any topic, we'll allot you 5 minutes and one opportunity to speak for each topic. Just to keep this meeting going, we've got a lengthy meeting here. And I'd like to get into streets, buildings, ground before it's too late. Oh, I don't have nothing on the agenda, so let me go on to topic 1. Review of the transit rentals, and that's draft legislative. This transit rental legislative has been reworked using the city of Sandusky's legislative as a template. Any changes has been in the red highlighted. Anything that they felt wasn't needed was stricken in the new paperwork we have. We won't meet the 2021 permit deadline for the transient rentals. So we have our time to get this finished this year and do it right. Prior to council discussing this in committee, I would like to ask Bill and Tony to go through it, this legislative from the beginning, to explain. They helped with Gwen to rewrite this legislative. So if Tony and Bill, if you guys want to go through it, and that way, if there's questions after that, we'll start taking them.
You want to go through Bill and Tony like we discussed, probably from the beginning?
Yes.
The places that we highlighted. So if we go to A, purpose and intent.
Yes. I think the note here was we will be amending sections 1270 to include transient occupancy, transient rental as a permitted use in most of the zoning districts as determined by city council. Bill, do you want to chime in here? With the
Unmute,
thought,
Bill.
Yeah, the discussion was not prohibiting them in any zoning district, allowing them city to city, or allowing them in every zoning district from border to border, pending they met the regulations that we set forth in this ordinance.
correct.
Do you want to go with any questions at this point before we move on? Barb?
So I'm correct, and that means they do not have to go to the BZA, that it will be automatic that they are permitted? Is that?
So
right?
so the discussion was had that forcing that many applicants to Board of Zoning Appeals would probably burden that board. I mean, we could have over 100 and 200 transient rentals coming in. We'd have to get public notice for we'd have to get signs out for everyone. And the board would then just look at the requirements that we have in the code anyways to make sure that they meet them. So we figured that was something that could be done administratively, making sure that the council approves the requirements that are in place in the ordinance to be a transient rental. Then if they meet those requirements upon the building department review, they meet all those requirements, then we would approve them. That would take the place of 2 weeks of public notice and having 20 to 30 applicants per month, potentially attending a Board of Zoning Appeals meeting.
Well, what areas are they not going to be permitted then? Doing in reverse?
That would be 100% at council's discretion. I find it hard to prohibit them in a particular zoning district, because why would one zoning district be allowed and the other wouldn't? Why would we allow them in the RS and we wouldn't allow them in the B2? Or, you'd be throwing darts trying to decipher which ones and justifying why one zoning district would get them over another.
Okay.
But that's absolutely council's right to have that discussion and make a decision that, maybe we don't want them in certain areas.
B, definitions, that was just some housekeeping there so it matches our codes instead of the Sandusky's code. That's for what?
Yeah, so technically that 126006, 111, and then 112, we would also have to amend that section to renumber all of those definitions. So that would be another piece of legislation I'd have to prepare once council approves this.
Same thing as we go into C.
Can I ask a question real quick, Tony?
Sure.
Well, you're saying a dwelling, but what about rooms? At least in some places, people rent out rooms as almost like a B&B kind of a situation. You are just saying dwellings. Do we have room to add in there?
We did discuss that. What was that, Bill, that we ended up with on that? With the dwelling?
Well, it says dwelling
Or-
or other living accommodations.
Accommodations.
Right.
Renting, living, so leasing or leasing dwelling as identified for, it doesn't
Could be a
see other
It says-
accommodations.
It says possession of a dwelling or other living accommodation.
Right.
I'm looking at 2 in under B1.
One.
I mean, we could add or other living accommodation to the transient rental
Right.
definition as well.
Correct.
Right, that's where I thought it was missing.
Yep,
Yep.
I can add that. I got that noted.
Okay. C, again, this is housekeeping as it pertains to our city, as opposed to Sandusky. The building department will be the one in charge of this ordinance. Do you want me to just read the changes, or do you want me to literally go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5?
Well, did all of council read all of these sections? I mean, if they have any questions, I guess they could ask them on each, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as we go along.
Okay.
So
All right, if
C
there's-
1 through 5, does anybody have anything besides what was in there?
No. I don't.
No.
Okay, go on,
Okay,
Tony to D.
D, transient rental permit application. Number 1, each operator of a dwelling being used for transient occupancy must apply to the building department. Again, that's just housekeeping for an annual permit, which expires on March 31st. We feel that date works best for, it's usually the beginning of the season for transient rentals, but also, if we use December 31st, since the building department is in charge of this ordinance, they have all of the what do you call it?
Contractor registration.
Yeah, all the
Contractors.
contractor registrations are due on the 31st. So the building department would be slammed with all these new applications. So we figured that March 31st seemed to be the best date for that.
Especially with the season not starting usually till April, May, June.
Right. So, which expires on March 31st of the year the permit is issued, and pay an additional fee of $200 per dwelling and an annual review fee of $100 per dwelling.
Renewal, not review.
Yeah, he just read it wrong.
Correct.
Yep.
And we use those numbers kind of from the majority of council. A lot of you guys were saying the 200, 100. That of course can be changed. That's just what we threw in there.
Right.
Emily's got a question.
Yeah, my question was, based on the inspection, did that have to be at 200 to cover it, or was that something that could be lowered for the original, or maybe the renewal be lowered? Are
No.
we stuck at those numbers, or?
Those numbers are for council to dictate whatever they see fit. There's a lot of operational expenses that go into this. 200 for the initial, getting everything initially put into the system, the first go round. That's why the initial is a little bit higher, would be collecting the information and getting it inputted into the system. After that, the 100 annual after that, the information is already in the system. So now we're just sending inspectors out to check the property for violations and then any hazards, and then update the system, update the information that's already in the system.
Okay, so as far as fees for all that, if we went a little lower, would it cover that also, is my question, I guess?
No.
No? Okay.
Barb?
Yeah, when we talk about a dwelling, if we have a multi-unit type place, is each unit a dwelling?
Yes,
Is the building?
Yes.
So each unit would be considered independently. Okay,
correct.
that was just a verification. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Bill or Tony? Then Tony, why don't you move on?
Okay, section 2, again, housekeeping with building department and city of Vermilion. Down on section E, we wanted to add CO detectors, as well as the smoke alarms that are required, the points of exit and so forth. And then we struck the parking plan, basically because it would be hard for the building department to enforce a parking plan when, it's legal to park on the street. So I think that was the main reason we did that.
And the yard parking is covered under our current code, so
Yes,
I think
we
that's
do have-
pretty much covered.
We do have yard parking, correct, ordinances. F, proof of property insurance, liability insurance. Commercial insurance is not required by VRBO, and owner responsibility to provide proof, and they can also have an umbrella coverage. Basically, what we're looking for here is just making sure that they have an insurance plan.
Okay, and Barb?
Yeah, I have a real problem with that. Can we talk to our insurance, can we talk to Arnold's about that and make sure that the city, because we're giving a permit and we're not requiring commercial insurance, that we don't put ourselves at risk in our insurance policy? From what I understand, in other cities, commercial policies are important, that private insurance or homeowners insurance will not cover you if you're renting the property. So I think we need, since we are, this is in our code, I think we better make sure that we're not putting the city at liability by not requiring commercial insurance.
Is that something Amy can contact our insurance company and ask that? Okay, I'll make a note.
The other thing I think probably goes in the same place is I think we need proof of ownership of the property. And I didn't see that any place here. I mean,
I thought we had that in there, but maybe, I think it may be down further. Let's get down further. I think we
okay,
did.
I just didn't see it, but I think if it's not there, we need to add it.
Steve Heron?
Thank you. So is the recommendation that we not demand proof of any insurance?
No, that we insist on commercial insurance
Correct.
and not homeowners insurance.
Okay, because at the end of the day, it's going to be the property owner's relationship with their homeowner's carrier to say, hey, listen, by the way, I'm engaging in this business.
We are licensing them, and.
Right, I understand, and
I
I think that we need to make sure that they have.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, I but have to say that that's a necessity, and
I agree.
it's going to be very difficult maybe for some property owners, but that's the whole purpose of this, is to.
Yep.
Well, it's in the application.
They do have to have insurance. They're just saying not commercial.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct.
You're right, that's a big issue. Okay, I understand.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that.
Right. And VRBO is not the only way people are going to be putting, I see that you have there that they don't require it, but.
That's just a note saying that we did hear from VRBO that they don't request it.
But people rent all different ways,
Right. So I think with Amy checking, I think we'll come back to that.
Okay.
Tony?
Moving on through G and then 3, 4, A, B, all the way down to E, that is just house cleaning. Getting to E, transient rental health and safety regulations. Number 1, the maximum number of persons who may occupy the dwelling overnight during a transient occupancy shall be determined on a case-by-case basis by the building department upon inspection. That way we can see how many bedrooms there are, how many beds, that sort of thing. Moving, go ahead, Barb.
I'm sorry, Tony. So I had someone with rental property in the township call me, and he said that they do not allow guests. So a person rents to a family and that family is okay, but there cannot be guests that come in there and stay. Does anybody feel that that's an important thing to include here? I'm just throwing.
Barb, I guess what I'm hearing is, I guess the building department's got to get a determination of how many beds are there, so they can say maximum people in this unit is this.
Okay.
If VRBO or whoever wants to rent a house has guests, a lot of them have little clauses in there that says, it's you and your husband. But if you bring anybody else, it's so much per person per night. As long as they don't exceed the maximum, would that be what you're looking at, Tony?
That sounds exactly correct. Yes.
I mean, we're just able to say maximum. After that, it's up to them or the renter that, if they bring other people, that's how I've seen it. And we've been using VRBOs and other things, and that's what they require.
Okay.
I think the building, go ahead, Barb.
We're not saying no parties or anything like that. I know, like in Vegas, you're not allowed to have parties in VRBO. You're not allowed to have people come visit. And
Well, I think it would be hard for the building department to determine who's the renter and who's the guest, as long as they maintained the number of people that they are eligible to have as per the beds and so forth in the room.
okay. Like I said, it was brought to me, so I said I'd bring
Sure.
it.
Okay, Tony?
Down to number 4. Again, this is referring to street parking plan. And then number 5 is overnight street parking unless approved. Again, we kind of thought that was going to be hard to enforce. I mean, you are allowed to park overnight on the street, so that's why we struck that. Number 6, the property being utilized as a transient rental shall display a transient occupancy permit visible from the street, issued by the building department.
You guys all got a copy of that
Yes.
occupancy permit that Melanie, the building department, was working on all those forms last week.
Number 8, no person shall sell food to a transient guest while the guest uses the property unless such person has obtained a food safety permit.
That didn't pertain to really what I think we wanted to regulate.
Correct. And again, with the no person shall sell or provide alcoholic beverages to any transient guests while the guest uses the dwelling, unless such person obtains an appropriate license from the state of Ohio. Again, another thing that's going to be hard to enforce. So we struck that. Number 10, no person shall be allowed to transient rent a dwelling that is in violation of the city's building and zoning codes. And then the rest of this page is just housekeeping with our verbiage replacing Sandusky's.
Except for G, let's go into
I'm sorry, where?
the G, penalties and fines.
Hold on a minute. Barb, you got a question.
I have a question. We had talked about making sure that it stated that only the owner of the property can get the permit. I don't see any place on here where we specify that. And we talked about making sure there were no outstanding debts on the property as far as the city is concerned. I mean,
I'm thinking we have that maybe in our permit application. I know I
didn't see it.
And then they have, if they don't, I know if they don't live in the city, they have to have somebody that manages it, that has to be within an hour.
Yeah, I saw that, but I think we need proof of ownership, and we also need to make sure that aren't open water bills or taxes or charges of any kind that the city is owed.
We have that in our.
It's clear of city debt. I mean, I think that's important.
Frank?
I was just going to say that in a permit application, only the owner can submit the application.
Yeah, I think
And I don't know how.
That's okay if it's in there. If I missed it then.
It's a third paragraph of the permit application.
Okay.
Okay.
That's cool.
There's no other questions. Gwen, you were talking about G, penalties and fines?
I was just looking where we did say about the registered owner and local contact for the transient rental shall be within a 1-hour arrival of the transient rental unit while the transient rental is being occupied. That we have a lot of that in our rental health and safety regulations, Barb, where we cover that.
Okay.
The penalties and fine, the first violation, 500, second violation, 1,000. And then what was the other one? 1,500 or $2,500. And Bill, you had some good points when we brought that up. Can you remind me what those were? Why we said those? We thought those numbers were fair. Do you remember?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about, just like we did with contractor registration, I mean, this is kind of similar to that, where contractors come in here, they try to work without the proper registration, and it's a slap on the wrist. I mean, the good enforcement is having a penalty in place that is intimidating. I mean, if you know you're gonna get a $500 fine on your first violation, and these violations are at our discretion. I mean, we're not gonna walk
Right.
around and throw fines at people. We're gonna say, hey, listen, we got an issue here. We need you to take care of it for us. This is what we see is what needs done. But it's important that it does escalate, because if they don't do it and they ignore it, then they need to know it's going to get stiffer every time that we have to revisit it.
Emily?
I missed the section, going back to the CO detectors above that, the floor plan of the dwelling showing numbers of bedrooms. Will that cost the homeowner money to purchase those plans, or?
No, they can generate those plans on their own. They can give us a hand sketch of the dwelling when they
Okay.
make the application. So I'll have an idea of what they're proposing before the building department goes out there for the inspection. Just kind of a rough layout. This is how the dwelling is set up. You know, okay, we got 2 bedrooms, we got a living room. They can sketch that themselves. We're not asking for professional architectural drawings.
Okay, thank you.
At least legible, right?
Yeah, agreed. Nothing in crayon on napkin, but
You'd be surprised.
oh, yes, sir.
Okay. Bill or Tony, you want to take it from there?
Continuing on to H. We struck all of this section. I think we determined that this is something that the law director needs to look at. Was that right, Gwen?
Yeah, because they really got into City of Sandusky, this, like I said, the civil action, the criminal action, additional
Correct.
remedies. And then at the bottom, you'll see where 1484.99, that was a penalty we had in our first draft. So we just wanted to know if council wanted just to stick with that penalty, or maybe have the law department look at our penalty clause and see if they have anything to offer.
I'm sorry.
Barb?
What's the difference between this $100 penalty and the one you were talking about, Bill? They're both penalties for violations, aren't they? What's the difference?
Yeah, you know, in my opinion, the penalties and fines that Sandusky had in section G pertain to the enforcement procedures and everything before that. The penalty we have in 1484.99, correct me if I'm wrong, Gwen, but this was just something that we had on the books at the time. You know, $100 for each day that the violation exists. This is kind of where we were going to lean on the law department and say, you know, which structure here makes sense and is correct for our intention.
Okay.
Basically, we would need, oh, go ahead, Barb.
I'm sorry, we may not have both sections, then we may just have one or the other.
One of
Right.
the,
Yeah, the
Okay.
G, the penalties and fines, and then the penalty section. That's, I think, what we need the law department to look at for us,
Okay.
to kind of help us, guide us on that part.
Steve Heron?
Yeah, I would just say that once this, if we enact the what we have here, that 1484.99 would be really superfluous and not needed. I mean, it just,
Yeah, right.
like what Barb was saying, I mean, there's no difference to me
Mhm.
once the other ordinance would be enacted.
Okay. Tony, did you have something or did you want to continue on?
No, Steve.
Okay.
I was gonna say, so.
Okay.
um,
Okay. Any other questions? If not, will you guys, we're right at the end there.
Yep,
Basically, and then all the attachments. We have the transient rental permit application, the transient rental renewal permit application, and then the transient occupancy permit. And there is I do notice in the permit application, again, that transient rental, we can change and add other living accommodation in the permit application as well, Barb.
Okay.
I see it defines that, but I think it's a good working document to start with, but if anybody has any suggestions or, because I will send this to the law department to review and then look at the penalty clause. And then
Now,
we
is
can
this
put it back
something
on the next finance or legislative meeting.
Is there any other questions from anybody in the audience? I can't see anything.
No.
If not, we'll put this on legislative for next month and then go ahead and make sure we get that information to the law director and we'll work it from there. Okay, topic 2, I have review of ordinance 2021-1, junk building, junk shops and junk yards. Any questions regarding the ordinance?
Steve, we have Attorney Chonaki here. Did I say that right?
Ben,
He sent a final draft if he wants to explain what he did. And we have Drew Worley. I'm just noticing his hand up. Steve, that's up to you at this point. I just
well,
noticed.
if Drew's got something for, what is it, the transient rentals, then let's take Drew before we take Ben, okay?
Hey, Drew.
Yeah, just a couple things real quick to use my 5 minutes here because a lot of stuff. Couple issues I have, and there's vast amounts, but the first thing I saw on in this new ordinance was that, again, we're sticking with the 30-day consecutive. Homer's brought up a good point several times that anyone that rents out month to month, if they rent out in February, they are now a transient rental property, and they would have to abide by this ordinance. Next, everything expires on March 31st. You guys had mentioned before that the building department has the contractor's registration on December 31st. So that'd be too much to do at the end of the year. Well, it looks like you're going to have all these people going to renew their permits for the next year all on that date. This sounds like the building department's going to be, it's going to be a little cumbersome to them to do those all at that time. And then is there provision set up to prorate that amount? So if I have a property that I do in September, is that prorated my fee since I'm using so much less of the time? What else we got here? Sorry, reading. I was glad to see that there's finally something in there that gives Steve Heron what he wants, and that's to know who's actually in there and gives you guys the power to get that information. So now it's not just baseless claims when he says that. You guys actually have that in writing now, so that's good. I still don't agree with that, but what else we got here? You guys aren't allowing people to advertise that there's going to be a transient rental prior to obtaining a license. I don't think that's right. I think people should be able to for future bookings. Obviously, if they book without having that permit, then they're in violation. But I don't think that you should stop people from advertising that they plan on it for the future. The fines, I think, are ridiculously overbearing, because the way I read it is essentially you could fine somebody $4,000 on day one. You go in there and you see enough violations on that, you could fine them up to $4,000 in one fell swoop. And then subsequently, you could fine them $4,000 per diem each day after that until those things are taken care of. I think that's overbearing. The fees, again, you're doing $200 for initial and $100 for renewal. When this was first brought back up to amend this ordinance, I believe Monica Stark said that she had checked with Bill DeFucci at the building department and they were fine with keeping the fee at $100. Now magically it has to be $200 or we're going to operate in a deficit. I'm not sure how that happened. It sounds like Bill DeFucci is open to it and that, you know, it's up to council to make that determination as to what the fee should be. The fact that you require someone to be within an hour from that rental, I think is a little silly. So if my property is here in Vermilion, I couldn't travel out to the west side of Toledo or the east side of Cleveland because that would put me outside of an hour from my properties.
That's not what that's saying, Drew. I'll just clarify that hour is if the owner doesn't live there, they have to have, like, say, somebody that would be a local contact for that property has to be within that hour, not the owner.
Okay, so if the owner does live at that property, but they're in Florida, they're okay with your ordinance?
It would be a local contact. So say they have somebody that manages the property for them. Say they're in Florida. Somebody's
Sure.
managing that property. they have to be within an hour. Somebody's got to be within that hour.
Yeah, so that's
Something
exactly
would
what I
happen.
said. That's exactly what I said though. So if it's my property here, I can't travel out to the west side of Toledo for the day because then I'm outside of an hour. Right?
For the owner or the other local contact, are you saying?
Either or. But we'll just say owner.
It's up for debate, I guess.
I mean, that's how I read it. Yeah, I guess that's all I have to say with this is I don't think that. Oh, I also noticed that you guys still plan on passing this by emergency, which I strongly recommend against doing that. I don't see that there's an emergency to do this. I don't see any reason to warrant that. So I strongly recommend that we strike that section 3, that it is not an emergency. And that's all I have. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Any other questions? If no other questions, we'll move on to item number 2, and that was review of ordinance 2021-1, and that was junkyards. And I believe, Ben, you had some information to go over the ordinance.
Yes, thank you, sir. So the law director and I took a pretty careful review of all of the comments from the previous committee meeting, and we made some slight modifications to the ordinance to try to accommodate those concerns. The principal change we made was to we incorporated a new definition to the definition of junk buildings, shops, and yards. Your previous code since 1969 has had the same definition, which is found throughout a lot of municipal codes throughout the state of Ohio, which broadly defines junk buildings, junk shops, and junk yards. What we've done to accommodate the concerns of folks who might want to engage in the repair of motor vehicles or boats, we've attempted to carve out that particular use insofar as it's already permitted under section 660.07 of the codified ordinances. So in doing that, we've done two things. We've narrowed the scope of the prohibition while at the same time clarifying some of the restrictions that exist on the usage. Beyond that, the ordinance remains the same, and the objectives, as the mayor articulated previously in his previous statements, are the same.
Okay, is there any questions on the ordinance 2021-1 regarding junk buildings? Emily?
I'm not sure if it's under the 2021-1 or the -4, but Homer Taft had brought up the donation containers and things like that. Would either one of those prohibit anyone having those on properties?
So I'm not sure the specific reference you're making. That would probably fall under the modular storage units provisions.
Okay.
Not related to this.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Barb? You got to unmute too.
The only question I had, and I asked it before, is I don't understand why we're including the residential areas in this, Ben. I mean, you can't have a junkyard in a residential area. It wouldn't be a permitted use. You can't, so it's really, to me, it's a property maintenance issue in the residential areas. So it's just, again, it's not a big deal, but.
No, I recognize the distinction. I think it's a good point to raise. I guess my response is that I'd prefer to make the commercial use explicitly prohibited to the extent it's not done so by mere definitions of the permitted and conditional uses within the residential districts.
Okay, so you want to keep it that way, the way.
Okay. Better to put people on notice than to have them go back and cross-reference other sections.
Okay.
Homer, and we got to unmute you.
Right, thank you. Homer Taft, 3972 Edgewater Drive, Vermilion. I'll start. I did, of course, share with you, and I hope you've all had a chance to see a comment on the transient, which has changed since the junkyard and the modular ordinances. I'm not going to repeat everything I said there, though I still believe everything I said there, but I will repeat the first thing. One person's junk is another person's treasure. And the way that junk is defined is, in my mind, extremely broad and broader than it should be. That said, my concern is with structures and buildings. And with all due respect to Mr. Chanaki, the exact words of the junkyard ordinance relate to any structure. A modular collection center is a structure under the ordinances as defined. So yeah, it includes this one as well as the modular storage ordinance. But the bottom line is, if people, Carvana just built a 200,000 square foot building that everybody wanted, that brings in potentially lots of taxes and lots of business and lots of other development. And that is a structure that is 200,000 of junk that people got rid of, that's going to be reconditioned and sold. And it would fit under the junk ordinance of this ordinance. If it's inside a structure, why do you want to prohibit it? If somebody's a collector and the car doesn't work and it was discarded by somebody else and it's a 1930 Stutz or something, why do you care? Why is that a problem? Most of this ordinance seems to be to closing the barn door after the horse left, as far as the so-called junkyard, whether it is or not, whether it really would be under this ordinance and definition or not, down at the east end of the city. And there may be other solutions for that. But if it's inside a structure, if it's not within sight and it's being responsibly done and it's not a fire hazard and so forth, why would you get involved in that at all? And then, as Mrs. Brady said, in a residential area, you really can't have a junkyard. And there's limitations on temporary work on boats, cars, things like that, but not permanent businesses doing it. So I really think that your ordinance is still exceptionally and inappropriately broad and wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other questions that we have on topic 2? Where do we want to take this from here?
Well, it's tabled on the agenda, so it's council's ready to proceed with the reading, then we will have a motion tonight to untable the third reading.
Okay, is there any other questions? Does anybody want to make a motion to untable it?
Yes, I'm going to make a motion to untable.
Second.
Okay, is there any questions?
Have we seen Ben's definition of junkyards? Have I?
So the definition of junkyards is in the amended definition of junk buildings, ships and yards is in the new section 69 for 1260. So section 1 of your as amended ordinance speaks to that. And although it's not in your legislation, the definition of junk is defined at 1260.06.68 within your existing codified ordinances, and it's been that way since the 1969.
Okay, any other questions? Gwen?
Skahan?
Unmute.
Unmute, Demi?
Yes.
Luca?
Yes.
Hollivax?
Yes.
Holmes?
Yes.
Brady?
No.
Aaron?
Yes.
Motion carried. It'll go back on for a third reading.
Okay. The last item I have tonight is review of ordinance 2021-4, and that's modular storage units. Is there any questions on this? This is also tabled. Barb?
I still have a question or a problem with the last section where we're limiting to 30 and with an extension 60 days. So if somebody, and I don't mean to pick on them, but somebody like Americut has a vehicle there, they can only have it there for 30 days. What is he supposed to do with it? I mean, it's what he runs his business out of. It's in an industrial area. I'm not sure why, we say it has to be, can't be seen from the right of way. They can't have electrical. I mean, we've got all kinds of limits to what it can do, but we're also limiting it to 60 days a year. I mean, that doesn't make sense to me. If I'm running a business and it is integral to my business, what am I supposed to do with it for the other 10 months? I mean, if I'm running a carpentry business and I don't think in the industrial area, I don't understand why this is a problem.
Well, maybe you could help me understand the specific example you're describing. This is simply for temporary storage containers.
Right.
And so what is the example?
So in 1272-17, we specified that they need a permit to have it, and that temporary storage containers are permitted to remain on a commercial industrial property for a period not to exceed 30 days within a calendar year. And then they can get a 30-day extension. So if I have a trailer parked up to my loading dock and it takes me 3 months to fill that trailer before I ship my goods out, I can't put it there. A contractor stores, his product in it on his lot in an industrial area. This doesn't make sense to me.
Barb, can I add to your situation, because I'm agreeing with what you're saying?
Sure.
Ben, I'm a general contractor, and I'm going to use Barb's suggestion. I'm going to talk about AmeriCut/2D construction. They get onto big projects. Could be a Lear water treatment plant, could be something in the steel mill, could be anywhere, a school project. They take those containers, put them on the job, and they store so that nothing's stolen on the project. Materials, tools, and everything else. Project's done. Maybe they got 4 or 5 of them. I know contractors that have multiple containers that they use on different projects. When they bring them back and put them in the yard for the next project to start, they're in violation, but they're a taxpayer of the city of Vermilion, but they cannot keep one of those containers in the yard for the next project to go out. And all they do is take them out of the yard, put them on a job site so they can use it for a storage facility so they can keep their material. So that's what I talked about one of the first times we talked about this. We're not taking into consideration contractors who use them on every day on job sites. Job site's done, they come home. Thank you. And I can understand too, the thing of put it out of the way so no one sees it, but to have a 30-day permit for something they might not have a job in 6 months from now, where are they going to take this? They're going to start, they own all this property. Now they got to take it down the road and go to a storage facility to drop off one of their containers. Is there any other questions, or anybody want to add to that, or have any other questions on any other topic on the storage modulars?
Do you want Ben maybe to review that section again?
Yeah, and I appreciate this is the first time I've heard that specific concern, and I think perhaps there might be some legislative workarounds. But just on the top of my head, the use, it sounds as if that use might not be a temporary use. If it's permanent home for that container is going to be at the job site or the contractor's main site, and it's going to go off site for specific purposes. I'm not sure it would fall within that temporary definition. But I recognize the concern and the ambiguity, and perhaps there's additional study that can be done on that. Mr. Valerius and I had talked through the provisions for the extension and limiting it to 30 and 30 on the day periods. Maybe the accommodation we can provide for is to allow for that second one to be for a period as determined, but that's appropriate by Mr. Valerius, the building inspectors, or something to that effect.
So,
Barb?
Yeah, so maybe I'm really confused. So if I put a permanent trailer on my property, I can do that?
I wouldn't say that. I would say that if this regulates temporary storage containers.
Yeah, so, but if I put a permanent storage container on my property, I'm okay.
Well, it wouldn't be regulated by the temporary storage container provisions of this section.
Okay, but I kind of
Maybe an
thought
accessory
that's
structure,
what
perhaps?
we were trying to eliminate is the possibility of people using modular storage units as storage units. So if the only difference is the word temporary, I think we have a bigger problem. I mean, am I wrong? Am I off base here?
I'm not sure I understand exactly what the issue is.
Well, I'm questioning if okay, I'll use an example, actually. We have a business in Westlake. We were told we could not put a storage unit on our property because you can't put a second building on a commercial, it's an industrial lot. But they told me if I got a wheeled vehicle, I could park it behind the building and use it as a storage unit permanently. Now, this ordinance, I thought, was to stop people from using those on lots, especially in the residential and B in business districts.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Am I wrong that, if it's a permanent structure, we're not stopping it?
Well, if it's permanent, it's not a temporary storage container if it's permanent.
Right, so are we accomplishing what we want to accomplish, I guess is my question. I see what I mean.
If I may, I think,
Maybe I'm off base here. I don't know.
Mayor,
I think one of the differences is we don't want to outlaw, say, for instance, metal sheds that you'd buy at
Right.
Home Depot or something, because they're permanently there. They've got a base, you put stuff in, they store your tools. What we're talking about is things that are units that have been originally designated for another purpose, like to ship stuff over to China or something like that, or actually coming the other way. And then to repurpose that as a storage unit without any kind of foundation, similar to what is actually possibly being used in storage places, rental places. Those units weren't originally intended to be a storage unit. I think that's one of the differences.
So do we need to say that this thing, if it has a foundation, it's okay?
I think we need to say if it's being repurposed as I'm not sure how to word it, but that it's being repurposed as a storage unit when its original purpose was something else. For instance, if that showed up outside of the dollar store and they were unloading goods for the dollar store and they were eventually going to take it away or load it up with something else, then it's being used for its original purpose. But if it's being planted there and you can put your lawnmower in it and it's going to rust and look like heck, then that's what we don't want.
I'm not.
Frank?
Sure.
And getting back to R. Brady's comment about the Westlake, well, it's two different things. A trailer has to be licensed. A trailer is a vehicle. And then, so I can see if you have a licensed trailer in the backyard of your construction site or in the backyard of your business, that's not a temporary storage unit.
It doesn't,
it has to be licensed.
it doesn't have a cab though. He told me to get one without a cab.
Well, as long as if it's a trailer, it has to be licensed, right?
Right.
I mean, you have to have a license on it if you're going to drive it on the road.
Well, Frank, I'll just throw into it. It's a semi with a trailer covered trailer, locked doors. You see them driving down the highway every day. So, and I'm understanding what you're saying. I have a current 2021 license plates on the back. It's a current vehicle. They took the tractor away. They left the trailer. It's different than the steel shipping containers.
Right. That's my point. Right.
Okay. I just want to make sure we're accomplishing what we want to accomplish. It's all right.
And I think we should look into what you brought up, Barb. A trailer with wheels. It's a semi-trailer that can be locked up. You can use it for storage. And is that the same thing as a steel container that they put on the ships and send to China?
I would say no. Personally, I would say no. It's not. It's a licensed vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
licensed trailer.
Well, I'm sure, yes.
Right.
Homer? Homer, if you, there you go.
There I am. Homer Taft, 3972 Edgewater Drive. Thank you. Again, I've written to you on all this. I'll just make a couple very brief comments. But the first is, I don't understand why you're even still considering this ordinance. 2 years ago, you passed something that basically prohibited shipping containers and modular storage. And now you're adding to it a new ordinance that does the same thing. And then you changed it to where it's still in the banned section, but it says except as provided in the ordinance you passed before. So if it's allowed, then it shouldn't be in the banned section to begin with. But I don't understand where a separate case has been made for this ordinance over 1272.17 and 1272.12 that are already in your code. So I'm very confused about why you're even doing this. But if you do it, and if you use the current definition, I think that first of all, you shouldn't be doing it in industrial zones. You shouldn't be banning people from bringing in and out shipping containers if that's their business and they're in an industrial type area. You shouldn't be banning people who are in agriculture from bringing in and out containers for their product that are shipping container type or modular storage type things and are moving in and out. And I'm concerned that you're not distinguishing all of those very carefully. You may be distinguishing, at one point this ordinance had in it, it included all trailers and everything. I think that to some extent trailers or wheeled vehicles may have been removed, but I'm not sure of that. But I still don't understand it. And I still believe that every recycle bin, every donation bin, and frankly, every 8-yard garbage bin of every business in the city would violate this ordinance.
Okay, is there any other questions from anyone? What's council's wish on this? Do you guys want to bring it back and discuss it again, or do you want to take it off of the table? Barb?
I'd like Ben to take a look at it again.
Okay. Frank?
Yes, I agree with Barbara.
I'm trying to find every, Brian?
Yes, let's hash it over again and really take a look at our existing ordinances.
Okay.
And yeah. So,
Steve?
Yeah, just I have concerns over the, kind of what's been brought over. I don't want to overreach into our contractors. I think the language that maybe we need to look at is, what's the use of the item at the time? Because in the examples given, it's actually a tool being used as part of the business. You're not storing things, you're having them there for a limited period of time of doing your job, and then you're keeping it for your business. But you have to establish as a business person that you need that item. It's totally different from what I think the administration is looking at, and that's keep this stuff from popping up all over our community where it's not appropriate, or at least many of us feel it's not appropriate. So thank you. I just want to focus in on what we need to maybe look at on that ordinance. Thank you.
Okay. Emily? Unmute.
I agree to look into it further.
Okay. Gwen, can we put that on for April?
Yes. I believe it'll be April 12th, if I remember right.
Okay. Any other questions before we go on? If not, legislation will be adjourned. And what I'm going to do now is streets, buildings, and ground for Monday, March 8th will come to order. I have nothing on the agenda. Is there any questions from anybody? If not, streets, buildings, and ground is adjourned. Thank you.
Yeah. Have a great week.
Aloha.
Bye.
Bye.